Can we talk for a minute?
So just wanted to discuss something which is a continuation of the conversation that was being held on Facebook a few days ago regarding domestic violence. We had a few brothers who had made comments to say that there are men who are also victims of domestic violence. So I wanted to address that because the first thing I wanted to say was that I am not in any way, shape or form insensitive to the fact that there are men out there who are victims of domestic violence. But there's a very important, I think, reason why I tend to focus more on what happens to the women, to the sisters. And that's because there probably aren't enough stories and accounts that we hear that can help us to maybe try to understand it a little bit more. That being said, I still find it difficult to focus too much on that, and this is just me, and I'm not being selfish, but when we hear about the nature of attacks on women, it's very difficult to appreciate that this probably happens to men as well. It's difficult to understand or fathom that. For example, we hear cases of where men have literally, they've pummeled their faces of their wives in, they've strangled them to the brink of death, they've used weapons to smash them, put them in hospital for weeks sometimes, go all out, destructive on their wives, and many times happening in front of the children, completely losing control, having police coming round. The accounts that we've heard over the years, it's so hard to even to listen to. So this is one of the reasons why, as I said, that it's so difficult to actually think, okay, yes, we know that there are men who experience domestic violence. On the show that took place on Iman channel, we know that there are accounts of where it happens to men. But what we want to know is, can they be on the same category, the same scale of what happens to women?
Women are being, I think, they are suffering much more than men are. I mean, unless there's statistics that can prove otherwise. And I'm a community worker, I work within my community, so I sometimes have to go to the hospitals with women who have suffered sexual and physical violence from their partners.
Send me some anecdotes, or if you've been a victim yourself, contact me on my Facebook or whatever, so that I can actually bring a little bit more light towards it. If I try to imagine myself in this situation, I kind of think, okay, what would I do? And I can see how the tables could very easily be turned. For example, if I was a victim of domestic violence and my partner was being physical to me, and then I decided one day that I'm not going to take it anymore, and because I'm naturally stronger, I would just grab her and I'd resist her, then suddenly that would become, interpreted as I'm now the aggressor. So I can see how it can be turned. So I would say that for myself, the first and foremost is I just wouldn't stay in a situation like that. And no matter what anybody would say, it's something that you'd have to walk away from, because it would be very, very difficult to find another solution. And this is just my opinion, guys. So don't quote me on this one, okay? But I'd say that if you can't reason with her, if you can't get someone to change her, and if that's the way she is, and you have children as well, especially if you've got a son and he's watching that, I think that for myself, I just wouldn't stay there. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I think that I would spend more time focusing on what happens to the women. And obviously, as I mentioned, these men that are doing these things, I've hold them into like three categories, right? Category one is the person who has been bullied throughout his life. When he's hitting out on her, he's leashing out on everybody that's ever done anything bad to him. I'd say to that person, you need to go and get help, and just get some advice, get counselled, and inshallah you'd be helped on that one. But that's category one. Category two, this is a child who has witnessed his father beating on his mother day in, day out. At some point, just having a resentment towards even women because of the fact that his mother is taking it and not doing anything about it, and maybe his dad beats him as well, so he resents his mum. And then as he gets older now, this resentment is just transferred over to his wife, and then he beats on her. Even so much so that this person through his life, he starts to experience depression. And as we know that, one of the symptoms of mental health is depression, and one of the symptoms of that is to be aggressive towards people. So maybe this is what it is as well. Maybe he's he's depressed, and this is how he leashes it out. This is how he vents it. So again, brother, you need to get help. And even for you, it may take some time, but at least if you take the steps towards doing it, you'll start to feel better. And everything is all about just taking those initial steps. Category 3 is the person who just loves beating on women. He just loves being dominant. He just loves seeing somebody in pain. He loves people beneath him. He loves this. And when he beats her, he feels good. He feels like, yes, it's a rush. And this person also needs to get help. But how is he going to get help? How are you going to get help if it's you, if I'm speaking to you directly? Well, I really don't know, because I can't say to you to hand yourself into the police, because that's not going to do anything. It's all about you, and it's all about you kind of like just self-reflection and wondering if this is the person that you really want to be. And maybe also, and this advice goes to all three of you in all three categories, is just to please look at yourself in the mirror. Because there are times, men, women, whoever, you look in the mirror and you don't feel particularly good about yourself on that day. But if you force yourself to look at yourself in the mirror, you will kind of maybe force change. You'll realize that you have to do something to put a stop to it. So that's something which, again, we need to look into it further. But those three categories, these are the people who, I know there are probably many, many more categories, but I'm only listing these three, and I've mentioned these three before, and I like to focus on these three. So it means that if you're out there and if you're an aggressor, then you need to place yourself in one of those categories. And if you truly are not category 3, then you will go out and you'll do something about it and you'll get help. But let's stamp it out together. Assalamu alaikum.
Can we talk?